Well, we still have to figure out something to do with that top, something that makes it pop, something that really brings attention to it. But what I could do now is I can worry about that later, and I could put these hinges on the box itself and get that ready to go. Somebody said to me, well, why don't you polyurethane everything? I could if I wanted to, but I want to take this time, because it's going to take a little bit of time, to show you how to either gain the hinge in, or some people refer to it as mortising the hinge in. How do you not do this? Well, first thing you have to understand is the hinge that we're going to use to attach that top to this box is going to be this 1.5 inch long hinge, which means the length of the hinge is 1.5 inches. The distance from the edge of the hinge to where the pin is comes out to be about 5/8 of an inch, which is nice because it's going to cover the thickness. Remember, we surfaced that down to 5/8 of an inch thick, and I actually did that to my top too. But we're going to use this 1.5 inch hinge, and we're going to cut this in. And it's important that you understand, as opposed to just slapping on the back and making it look like you have no idea, to cut this in, it's really the first class way of doing it. But the thing that I want to point out is you have 8 holes and 8 screws. If you lose one of those screws, you're not going to find another one of these screws, because it looks like it's a number 3 screw, and good luck trying to find that. So all I'm going to say to you is, when you open up this box, we're going to open this up to make sure that when we cut it, it comes out absolutely perfect. We don't want to lose those screws. So what I'm going to do is take a utility knife or a sharp chisel. What I'm just going to do is score the package, try to leave the screws right in place. I'm just going to try to knock out one hinge, because all I really need is one to give me an idea on where to do this. So here's my one hinge. I'm going to put this back. If you want to, you could tape it so you don't lose those screws, but losing those screws is paramount. It's really important. So here's my hinge, and here's the way not to do it. If this was going to be my top, I see so many times where people will take this hinge and they put it just like this. Is there a sloppier way than that? No, absolutely not. That is the sloppiest way of doing it. What we're going to do is we're going to cut a dado. We're going to cut across this grain, and we're going to notch this in so that when we put this hinge on here and put the lid on the top of it, the only thing that you're going to see is going to be the pin of the hinge, and it's really a classy way of doing it. You will only see something that looks like that, so that when you open it up, you'll see the exposed hinge on the inside. But to do that, we're going to have to make a cut into the side, or actually the back of the project, and we're going to go down approximately 1/4 inch, maybe just a little bit less than 1/4 inch. I put the 2 flaps of the hinges together, and this looks like it's a little bit less than 1/8 inch. And that little space, probably about 1/4 inch. Now, what I want to do is, I'm just going to cut the dado on the box side. I'm not going to cut anything onto the top side, because that's super tricky. If you really wanted to do a great job, you go halfway onto the box side, halfway onto the lid side, but it's really, really difficult to do. So I'm going to show you the easiest way to do it, and the way that's going to show you the most success. I want this hinge, because of the length of this box, I'm going to say I want the hinge maybe about, I don't know, what would you say, maybe 1.25 inches in from the ends of this. On a regular size box that you have on your plans, what I'll usually tell you to do is to start the hinge in about 1 inch in from the sides. I'm going to make mine about 1.25 inches. I'm going to see if I can't not screw it up, because I got 1 inch stuck in my mind. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to raise the blade up to about 1/4 inch. And obviously the blade is a lot higher than 1/4 inch. How am I going to do this? Well, I'm going to take a piece of scrap wood, just a little piece of scrap wood. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this piece of scrap wood, I'll get my miter gauge out. And what I'm going to do is raise it up to where I think it is 1/4 inch. It looks pretty good. make a couple of passes. Now I want to see how my hinge lays on here. So if I take my hinge, flap it over, lay it flat, and gap it, put that little bit of a gap in there that it was before, that looks like it's pretty good. It might be a little deep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the blade down just a hair. Just a hair, maybe I don't know, a 1/16 of a turn, and I'm going to tighten the blade down, the blade height. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the fence to 1 1/4 inches, which was the distance we decided we wanted in from my sides. And like I said, normally I would have it 1 inch, but because this box is a little bit longer, I'm going to set it up about 1 1/4 inches. I think that'll be a pretty good spacing. So I want to set the fence to 1 1/4 inches. I'll lift up the black knob, slide this over. Of course, the most important thing is that you know exactly where the heck 1 1/4 inches is. And on our fence, it looks like about there. I'll lock it down, and it'll make the cut. Now we really have to think about this. We want to cut the notch on the back side of the back of the project. So if I look at this, I have to identify what side do I want to see? Do I want to see this side and make that's my front? Or do I want to see this and make this side my front? You got a preference? Huh? Hey, I'm talking to you. Does it matter? Oh, I like the dark. I don't know why, but that streak kind of appeals to me a little bit more. So with your help, I'm going to say this is going to be the front. And I'll make this side the back, and that's important. Because when I cut this notch out, I'm going to cut it using the table saw. And when I do this, I cannot cut into the front. So how the heck is he going to do this? Well, that's the trick. This is where the trick lies. When I do this, safety glasses, roll up my sleeves. How wide is that blade? 1/8 inch. So if I want, I could make one cut, move it out, another cut, move it out, another cut, move it out. I could do that and make 12 cuts, which will give me the length of this hinge, which is 1.5 inches. Some of you right now are going, I know what he's going to do. He'll set up the dado head. He'll use 2 blades and 4 chippers on the dado head, and they'll cut out a swatch 3/4 inch. Well, I don't want to use the dado head. I'm going to use a single blade. It's going to take me a little bit longer. What I don't like about using the dado head when I cut out that much, especially with an open grain wood like oak, is that when I cut out that much, sometimes it might chip out on the back side. So what I'm going to do is use a single blade, just make an 1/8 cut, and I'm actually going to make 12 cuts on this, or actually, no, 11 cuts on this. 11 cuts to get 1.5 inches long. Now, let me ask you a question. How is he only going to make 11 cuts and not 12 cuts for 1.5 inches wide cut? How is... you got to do 12 of them. If each one of them is 1/8 inch, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 1/8, 8 of them is 1 inch. 4 of them would be 1.5 inches. So it's 12. It's 11. Why? Because we have to allow for the thickness of that blade. When I make the first cut at 1.25 inches, it's going to cut 1/8 inch wide. So what I have to do is allow for the thickness of the blade when I'm making my cut to be 1.5 inches. This will make more sense when we check to see if the hinge fits. But it's your question. How wide is that blade? The blade is 1/8 inch. Why do we make 11 cuts and not 12 cuts? Because one of those cuts allows 1/8 inch for the thickness of the blade. That's going to be your question this time. Let's make the cut, shut up, and start cutting. And we'll see if we can get some answers. If I want, I could use this miter gauge. I want to have the back side, and I said I like that streak. This is going to be my back side, but there's a decent amount that's rubbing up against the fence. So when I make this cut, I could cut it and then flip it around, cut on the other side, and there's enough board where it's not going to kick back on me, I don't believe. I'm not going to use the miter gauge. We'll try to use just regular, the regular box. Here we go. 1/8 of an inch, set it 1 1/4 inches. I'm going to make my first pass. I cut, I hear it. I cannot come all the way through. Why not? Because it would cut through the front. So after I hear the sound and it finishes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my box, rotate it up, slide it out. Another thing that you can do is you can make the cut. When you finish hearing the cut, just move it right back out. So there's my first cut. It's set at 1 1/4 inches, but it's really cutting into 1 3/8 inches. The 11 will make more sense after we do this again. Now what I'm going to do is flip it around and I'm going to do the other side. Oops. Problem. That's the front side. So now I introduce another question here. What is a plunge cut? That's what you're going to do. To make this plunge cut, if I were to cut, I'm going to cut through the front. Can't do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this box and I'm going to tilt it back. It's kind of like the opposite of the way I did it when I was making my first cut. What I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the box in. On our table saw, if you come over to the front, you'll notice that it exposes that throat plate right there. So what I want to do is, once I clear the throat plate and I move it in maybe about 3/4 inch, I'm going to drop this down. I drop it down, it's on the inside opening of the box, and I finish the cut. Is it dangerous? Yes. Do you have to make sure you're always thinking? Yes. I'm not worried about the first cut because everybody always remembers the first cut. It's always the second cut, the third cut, the 8th cut, the 9th cut. That's the one you have to worry about. So here's my cuts. Here's the first one. Here's the other one on the other side. If I look at this, it looks a little bit shy. I'm going to raise the blade up a little bit. I probably had it right when I made the first cut. So here we go again. I'm going to go into the same cut. I cut. Hear the sound, it stops, move it back, flip it around, up, move it in until I see about 3/4 inch, drop it down, finish the cut. So there's my 2 cuts. Those look good, I'm happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is move the fence out. How much do I move the fence out? 1/8 inch, because that's the thickness of that blade. So what I'll do is, right now I'm at 1 1/4 inch, I'm going to move it out to 1 3/8 inches. I can't see much, but I could see 1 inch, I could see 2, I could see 1.5 inches, I could see 1 1/4 inches, I could see 1 3/4 inches. I'm going to move this out to 1 3/8 inches, which is smack dab between 1 1/4 inches and 1.5 inches. And I'm doing this with only one pair of glasses. Lock it down, I cut again. Cut, finish hearing sound, move it back, flip it over. Lift about 3/4 inch past the groove, drop it down, cut. That groove now is 1/4 inch wide. I have to go all the way out to 1.5 inches. So let's see if we can't do this a little bit quicker. Right now I'm at 1.5 inches. There's my first cut, flip it, raise it, 3/4, drop it. Now I go to 1 5/8 inches. Cut. I got it think. 1 3/4 inches. Drop it. So you can see how quickly I'm making that cut. And the other thing is it doesn't chip out like a dado head would. Dado head, I would worry about that. Now if I started at 1.25 inches, where do I end up? What is the last setting that I'm going to set the fence to? Started 1.25 inches. This thing is 1.5 inches long. 2 3/4, right? Wrong. It's not going to be 2 3/4. It's going to be 2 5/8. Why? Because I have to allow for the thickness of that blade. When I make my setting at 2 5/8, I'm going to get a final cut that's 2 3/4. Why? Because that blade cuts 1/8 of an inch. So right now I'm at 2. I just finished my cut in 2. I go to 2 1/2. 2 1/8. Two 1/4. And again, my hands are nowhere near that blade, too. 2 3/8. Whoop, 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 whoop. How easy is that to screw up? Ask the 30 people that have screwed up. 2 1/2. And I just want to check this. See what this looks like. You could see sometimes you'll have a little bit, like that little areas there, because maybe I moved it a little bit wider than that 1/8 of an inch. Of course, you can go along the grain. I don't have superhuman strength, but I can do that, and it just cleans it up. Now I'm getting to where the important stuff lies, and that is I don't want to cut this so it's really loose. So I'm going to make one more setting. I think I can make one more setting at 1/8 of an inch, and then I'm just going to take a hair off a little bit each time. So right now I'm at 2 1/2. I'm going to make this a little bit less than 2 5/8. I haven't said my prayers yet. So here we are at 2 5/8. Oh boy, look at how close that is. If I move that in just a skosh, out just a skosh, and cut it again. Oh, baby, are you kidding me? Are you serious? It looks like I picked a good day to give up drinking. Oh, yes. I don't have any movement of that. That's nice and snug, and it allows the top to flap down right inside that groove. So I'm going to make my second cut here. This will be it. Whoop. Don't want to make that mistake at this point of the game. Just shut that off. I'm not going to lower that blade. I have to see if the hinge fits on this side too. Sometimes you get these little areas that are a little bit raised. All you have to do is take a nice sharp chisel, go across there, just flatten them out. This one's got a little bit, but it's not a big deal. Man, but that looks good. Now I want to take the hinge. I think this was the side I checked in before. And look at how beautifully that fits exactly even with that back surface. That's really good. Do I get lucky? No, it's not luck, baby. It's skill. Come on. Oh, this one's tighter. But that does fit in nice. This one, for some reason, is a little bit tighter. Maybe I came off the fence a little bit when I was cutting. But the flap does close down. Maybe I'll cut that just a little bit more. I'm gonna leave it the same setting. See if it makes a difference. And I really like the way that other one fit. I did hear a sound. Yeah, that's better. Perfect. You don't want to squeeze it in. If you squeeze it in, remember that this top hinge, when it closes, has to flap and actually make that clearance. So right now, that fits perfect. I really like that. So it just slides in there. I'm all set. The next thing that I could do is I could mount these hinges, or what I could do is polyurethane the rest of the box. You know what I think I'm going to do? I think I'm going to polyurethane the rest of the box. Do you think this video is too long? Really? You think I should mount the hinge? Yeah? All right. Let's go to the table. I'll see if I can't mount the hinge, or perhaps two. Yeah, here's my hinge. I'm going to try to do this quick for you. Understand that these two hinges are exactly the same. There's no difference in the hinge. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the hinge, just lay it exactly where it's going to be on my box. I really need two pair of glasses on this one. Do I have my little funny hammer that I love? I thought I brought that out. No? Oh, boy. I thought I took that out. See how planning? You're thinking ahead, and you forget exactly what you wanted to leave. All right, here's the story. I'm going to take this hinge, place it exactly where it's going to go. Right there, it fits perfect. What I want to do is I'm going to take a pencil, smack dab in the center of this hole, I'm going to put a little dot. And I will tell you something, that when you put that dot there, if you have a little raised piece of wood, it's going to be difficult to put it right in the center. And even with two pair of glasses, being 62 years old, it's hard to make sure it's exactly centered. But what I did was, as best as I can, I put a dot in the center. I'm going to take a finishing nail. I'm going to lay a finishing nail right on that dot, and I just mark this with the point of the finishing nail. And the reason why I do this is I need to drill a hole to put that screw in, but I want it to line up in the middle of each one of those holes. Because this hinge is exactly the same as the one that's in the box, I could do the same thing for this one. Line it up. Look at how nicely that slides in. Wow, I am impressed. I'm going to take my pencil, I'll put a dot in the center. It really bothers me when and of course there's no light in the shop. That's why I'm going blind here. I'll put my dot there, I'll put my dot here. It bothers me when I see people just take a pencil and darken in that hole. And I'm like, well, you still can't find the center of it. I put a little dot on there. And I'm going to do the same on this. That lines up pretty well. Let's see. That one might be a little bit off. This one looks good. This one might be a little bit off. Let's try this right there. Yeah, of course, it's going to go in the same hole. All right, we're going to leave that. Now it's too big on the other side. That's pretty funny. Yuck, 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 yuck. Well, we'll leave that one. We'll put this one in, okay? The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my drill, my cordless drill. I have the quick change bit that everybody knows that I really like. I flip this around. I'm going to put the pilot hole over here. I don't have to leave the hinge there, but if I want to, by putting that nail, the drill bit will kind of follow that nail. The other thing is they sell something called the VIX bit that'll self-center on a counterbore hinge. You can use that. What I did was I just drilled my pilot hole into the oak. The tricky part about drilling a pilot hole is that if you make the pilot hole too wide or too deep, the screw will just spin. So it can't be too deep and it can't be too wide. So on this, I tell people to usually go about half the distance of the drill bit. Some people ask me to take a piece of masking tape, put it on there for them. Once I drill down, which I did, now I'm going to take my screw, flip this over, pull out the brass ring, flip the drill bit over so I have the screw head. And now what I want to do is I want to put pressure on this and put the screw in. I'm just going to simply go on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. Lot of pressure on, off, 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 on, off. When it flattens even with the hinge, I don't want to strip that. I see people do that all the time. They'll just spin that until that screw head strips. If they try to get out because it's not accurate, you're done. It's going to stay right there. The tricky part is I kind of screwed up my hole over here. So let me see if I can't make that pilot hole a little bit better by drilling it in. See how that wants to find the center? I'm just going to go at this at an angle. Sometimes I can get lucky by moving it this way. Of course I can't. Moving it this way. Of course I can't. Oh, he's making a mess with this. Maybe he didn't pick a good week to give up drinking. Another screw. I think I might have got that pretty good. Sometimes it's more just a feel. Remember, a lot of pressure. Look, on, off, 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 on, off. And if I feel that hinge, which I did, it didn't move at all. So it stayed right there. I take the flap, lay it over, and that flap lines up exactly even with that top surface. How freaking good am I? You know what it is? Luck. You get lucky. I'm going to take this screw. I'll put this screw in here. So I'll have my screws already mounted to the box. Then what I might do is polyurethane the box. Hey, you guys still haven't given me a hand with that top. I think that's the next thing that we're going to attack is that top. I'll get these in. Maybe I'll polyurethane the outside of it, show you what a dovetail looks like, and then we'll attack the top. Have a great one. I hope I didn't scare you with the 2 pair of glasses. Just be careful when you're making the plunge cut on the table saw, and always remember you're thinking which is going to be the front, which can't have a cut in, which is going to be the back that you do want to cut in. Good luck mortising. I'll see you later.